Hi, Mr. Loader here. Hope you're all keeping well. Just wanted to talk to you about the English lesson for Monday, the 11th of January. The Walt is to infer a character's feelings. Now, the first thing I suggest you do is watch the story of Jim and the Beanstalk again. So you can get it by going to our YouTube channel or by downloading the PowerPoint and clicking on the link. So let's discuss so I'd pause the video and then come back to it in a second once you've watched the story again. Right, let's start by discussing the Walt. So what do we mean by infer? Now, these are two things that as a definition in what it says. The act or process of reaching a conclusion about something from known facts. A conclusion or opinion reached based on known facts. So it's being able to understand something from what you know, basically, or what you can see. So I thought I'd show an example. Here we've got a picture of a boy kicking some leaves, and there's some questions with it. So it says, what time of year could it be? Now, because there's leaves on the floor, that's our clue. So a time of year when there's lots of leaves on the floor and you can go out and kick them about is autumn. So there's a good chance this picture is in autumn. The next one says, how is the boy feeling? Now, if I look at the boy, there is a smile on his face. His body's open wide, and he's kicking the leaves. He looks like he's having a really good time. So I definitely think he's feeling happy and excited. And then the last one, where might the boy be? Now, this one's probably the hardest one out of the three. He's got his coat on, and his wellies on. There are also leaves on the ground, so he needs to be outside somewhere, doesn't he? Now, we need to use our imagination a little bit and think about where might there be leaves outside on the ground. So I guess it could possibly be our garden, or it might be at the park, for example. You might think of a few other places that you might find leaves on the floor. Okay, so that's what we mean by infer. It's looking for clues, isn't it, from either the pictures or from the text. Okay, and we're going to be doing this with the story Jim and the Beanstalk. So on the next slide, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger just so you can see it clearly. Okay, sorry the text isn't brilliant, but I've tried scanning it in so you can see. So this is our practice question. How does Jack feel when the giant opens the door? So we can see the giant there open the door, and Jack stood up at the bottom, isn't he? He's so tiny compared to the giant. So we need to think about how the boy feels. Now, it's hard to tell by looking at the picture because we can only see the back of Jim, can't we? I meant to put Jim in the question. So it's hard to think about that. So we're going to have to look at the text. Okay. Now it says, Jim ran to the castle and knocked on the door. He waited and waited until the door was slowly opened by a very old giant. Now we could start, couldn't we, by thinking about what would we think if we were to see a giant. Okay, but then in the next part it does give us some clues. Aha, said the giant. A boy, a nice juicy boy, 3 fried boys on a slice of toast. That's what I used to enjoy eating in the old days. So if I had that, I'd be terrified. So Jim probably feels terrified to start off with. But then if we read on a little bit further, he does say next, but I've got no teeth now. Come in, boy, you're quite safe. So after hearing that, I think Jack's feeling is going to change slightly, isn't it? He's going to start feeling a little bit more relaxed, a little bit happier, because he knows there's no threat from the giant. He's saying, now I've got no teeth to eat you with for a start off, and it is safe to come in. And I've done an example of an answer to this question. So I put, Jim would have felt scared at first because the giant said, a boy, a nice juicy boy, Then he would have started to feel better because the giant then said, "I've got no teeth, and you're quite safe." Okay. Now you'll notice that I have put speech marks in there of when the giant is talking. So this is actually the fly high challenge. So if you want to have a go at the fly high challenge, see if you can put in the speech marks. You can always look back at the text. I've put the text from the story next to each picture. So let's have a look at the next one. And again, I'll put how did Jack, and I meant to put how did Jim. How did Jim feel after he was let into the house? So let's just read it. The giant shared his breakfast of beef and beer with Jim. "Is your name Jack?" he asked. "No," said Jim. "It's Jim." "Did you come up beanstalk?" asked the giant. "I came up some sort of plant," said Jim. "Is that beanstalk again?" said the giant. It came up once before. That pesky boy Jack stole some of my father's gold and took our golden harp and our golden hen." So, just reading part of it. So, how did Jim feel? Now, even if we just look at the picture, he looks quite relaxed there. He's drinking from an egg cup, isn't he, Jim? But also, it does say straight away, the giant shared his breakfast of beef and beer with Jim. So obviously, the giant was very friendly to Jim. So he's going to be feeling relaxed. He's going to be feeling quite happy. Maybe even ecstatic might be a better word to use. So next one, how does Jim feel when the giant gets angry? Okay, now this is the learning activity. So please write down your answers to this and explain why as well. So again, I've put the text there. Okay. Remember, he starts getting angry after Jim starts saying about glasses. Okay. Jim, the giant, is quite angry because he can't do the things that he used to do. Okay. Things aren't as easy for him anymore. So the next question for our learning activity is, how does Jim feel when he gets the gold coin? So this is when he gets the gold coin at first. So you can see him showing it to his mum. Okay, and his mum almost being knocked over by it. I think it's because it's so bright and shiny. Okay, now I'll just say this as a bit of a clue. So you could look at Jim again, the picture of Jim and what he looks like. That might give you a clue. But also it says about him showing it to his mother, and before she could say anything, he ran off. Okay, so that might give us a clue. And then I think this is the last question. How does the giant feel after he has been given the glasses, teeth, and wig? Again, write your answer into your book. Okay, now you can look. There's a real good clue in the picture, isn't there, of how the giant feels? But also there is a clue from what the giant says. Okay, and what he does as well. Okay, so think about those things. Oh, sorry, this is the last question. How does Jim feel after he gets a letter from the giant at the end of the story? Okay. And again, you can look at the picture to give you clues on that. So I've put the learning activity and I've just wrote down all the questions again. There's 4 questions for you to answer. And remember, the fly high challenge is to use speech marks in your answer, like I did on that example on the first one. Now, there are some sentence starters here if you need them, okay, on the slide afterwards, okay, and they go with each question, they're in the order. So when the giant gets angry, how does Jim feel? When Jim gets the gold coin, how does he feel? After Jim gives the giant all of the things, how does the giant feel? After Jim is given the letter and coin, how does Jim feel? Or you might want to use, at the end, Jim feels. Okay, and explain your answer. Okay, and just end with, I wanted you to think about, are the feelings the same or different to the original story? So I'm sure you're all very familiar with Jack and the Beanstalk. You can find it on the internet if you want to look at it or listen to it again. So does the giant feel the same way in that story? does Jack feel the same way in that story towards the giant as Jim feels towards the giant? Okay, so that's what I'd like you to think of. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy it, and please send your work to the parent support email address because we really want to see your work. That would be fantastic if you could share it. Take care.